talk to you about why you get rejected in the first couple of minutes of the interaction. Why is it that I have consistently good interactions time and time again, and yet my students have consistently bad interactions and rejections, at least, before I teach them? What are the most common mistakes that you are probably making that are getting you rejected? That's what we're going to talk about today. And this is just the start of some amazing content that's coming over the next couple of weeks, because the system is dropping very, very soon. So you want to hit that subscribe button, hit that notify button, and let's check out the biggest reasons you're getting rejected right now. Let's talk about the two most common scenarios that I see every single day of why guys get rejected within the first 1 to 2 minutes of the interaction. And funny enough, these two scenarios are for completely opposite reasons. Okay? Scenario number one, you walk up to the girl, you just talk about random topics. You ask her name, you ask where she's from, you get into, talking about sports, talking about the weather. Maybe you're even joking around, maybe she's even laughing. And then at a certain point, she says, well, hey, I gotta go, it was nice to meet you. What happened? Why did she say nice to meet you? The number one reason for nice to meet you is you didn't get to the point. Okay, you didn't get to the point. You walked up to the girl for a reason. You clearly initiated contact for some reason. And then you didn't express to her what it is. Put yourself in her shoes. Well, maybe you're too scared to express your reason. Maybe you're like her, but you're too scared to express that. Well, in that case, you're not the type of guy that she would want to be with, and so she's kind of over it. On the other hand, maybe the reason why you're not expressing why you're there is because the reason you're there is something embarrassing or shameful or awkward, or maybe you have an agenda, in which case the girl will be smartest to just get out of that awkward situation and bid you farewell. See, even if the girl likes you, she's not going to do the work for you. Funny thing, a girl likes a guy if. It's an interesting concept. She likes you if. She thinks you're attractive. She likes you if you know how to make the right moves. Girl wants to go home with you. She likes you if you know how to go home with her in a way that makes her not slutty. Girl likes you on the open. She likes you if you're able to carry the conversation forward in a way that makes it positive, non-awkward, and makes it a win for her. So if you seem shady about your agenda, you seem like you're trying to avoid telling why you're there, well, then the girl's going to be nervous, she'll be awkward, and she'll do the path of least resistance, most obvious thing, which is, take care, nice to meet you, I'm going to get out of this awkward situation. And this is one of the biggest mistakes I see, specifically for beginners, but for all guys in game that haven't really learned how to establish a premise in the proper way. Okay, now the second scenario that I see is a little bit different. Guy goes in and he opens with something that gets right to the point. He says, hey, you know what? Super hot, I wanted to come talk to you, right? And then he kind of like, every single time the girl says anything that could possibly be sexual, he's like, hey, yeah, so let's do this. He's like, so yeah, have you noticed how hot I am? And he's very brazenly playerish. Maybe he talks about the fact that he slept with other girls in the past, which is an attractive quality that he has slept with other girls, but it's an unattractive quality that he is talking about it, all right? And so what this guy's doing is he is getting to the point. He is establishing the premise that this will be man to woman. However, he's establishing it in such a way that it is not a win for her. The narrative in the girl's head, the way that she'd be thinking about the interaction is this. This guy came up to me because he thought I was attractive with the idea of sleeping with me. He didn't know anything about me then. He doesn't know anything about me now, quite likely, and he still just wants to sleep with me. That means I'm not special. That means he would sleep with any random girl. That means that if I sleep with him, he won and I lost. Girls don't like losing. So when you are too overt about the premise, when you're too obvious about the fact that you're being playerish, too obvious about the fact that you have an agenda, in that case, the girl will get that you like her, but oftentimes she's going to view it as a loss. Now, the second one's a little bit better than the first one because at least you're giving yourself a chance. If the girl just happens to really like you, maybe she'll go with you. If a girl happens to just be flattered that she's getting talked to, maybe she'll go with you. But you're not going to get a really high percentage sort of chance of result, and you're not going to get results with really high quality, high caliber girls through these means, okay? What you would really like to do is become good enough at establishing that it's man to woman that you can do it in a way that doesn't just smack her in the face with the fact, right? In a way that is subtle and makes her want to chase you. And that's what advanced game is really, really all about. So when you're talking about the opener, when you're talking about establishing the premise after the opener, what you'd really like to do is Get to the point, but get to the point slowly. Instead of one massive move, hey, I like you, I want to fuck you in a back alley. That's probably not going to work very well. But instead, if it's, hey, you know what? You're kind of interesting. Maybe we could get along. Oh, that was cool. That I'm not so sure about. Oh, you know what? You're winning me over. All right, fine. We can talk. We can hang out. Now there's a good narrative for the girl. Now there's a good story in her head, and now it feels right to her. All right? So here's the thing, to kind of the takeaways. First of all, you have to get to the point. Otherwise, she's going to think you're scared of getting to the point, or the point you're getting to is shady, manipulative, or has some kind of agenda. Number two, you need to get to the point in a way that takes into account her experience. Understand the experience she wants is not the experience of some guy chasing her super hard with an agenda. What she wants is the experience that she and the guy have something special, some kind of relationship between the two. All right, so what I'm going to show you right now is some student infield of two students making these two very common mistakes so you can see it very clearly in actual practice. Let's check that out right now.
Excuse me? You look really sporty right now. I feel like you're some kind of like sports model or something.
Okay, so what's good, what's bad about this? So his vocal projection is decent. His tonality, a little bit trying for rapport. You can hear slanting up at the ends. Basically what I mean by that is that the words out of his mouth sound a bit like questions, even when they're declarative statements. Biggest problem though is this. Where is he standing relative to the girl, right? He is behind her. And if you watch the approach angles video that we have in the opening section, we talk a lot about that. We talk about how that is just death to an open, right? I mean, think about it. If she were to turn around, I mean, if she was trying to engage with him, she'd have to be like literally walking with her head like turned backwards. It's very uncomfortable. It's very unlikely. You're just asking to be ignored. Also, it feels a lot like you're following or chasing the girl. So that's going to be a major, major problem.
Huh? What's your name? Where are you going right now?
I'm going to yoga.
Yoga? Damn.
So what do we see so far? We see question after question after question. So that means that, first of all, it's putting her on a pedestal. It's making this interaction all about her. Secondly, you're asking her to provide all the interesting material. You're not providing any of it yourself. And thirdly, she has no idea who you are. She has no idea if you're a cool guy, what your opinions on things are. She has no sampling of your personality. And in a very real sense, what you're trying to do in game is give the girl a sample of your personality as quickly as possible. So that's absolutely not being achieved. Finally, you're putting the girl on a pedestal, right? You're saying, oh, okay, everything about you is important. I'm fascinated by you. All those kind of things. So you're just setting yourself up to come off as low value, to come off as kind of uninteresting, and to come off honestly as a little bit of a burden because you're continually asking her to provide the conversation.
Like a hot yoga, like a new trend, is it actually? Yeah. What is like the difference between hot yoga and just yoga?
It's not a lot. Room is really hot.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hot yoga.
Right.
Okay, and here it's becoming very clear that the questions are just filler questions, right? What's the difference between hot yoga and normal yoga? Oh, it's hotter. Okay, got it. So clearly he's kind of, just asking questions for lack of something else to say. We kind of mentioned this the last time I cut it, but what I want to ask is what's missing? Not just what has he done, but what is missing in this interaction? And the answer is actually premise. There is no man to woman premise whatsoever. Right? He's asked a question. He's never said, hey, you're interesting. Hey, you're cute. Hey, maybe we'll get along. Maybe you won't. Right? And so at first that's okay. Right? It's okay to not have premise in the first 5 seconds, the first 10 seconds. But over a long enough time, if you don't have any premise, you're going down this route of being very, very platonic. Right? So the first time you have an opportunity to show premise and you miss it, it's not necessarily a mistake. Second time is not a mistake. Third time is not a mistake. No time individually is necessarily a mistake. But if you miss an opportunity and miss an opportunity and miss an opportunity and you never get to the point, that's a major mistake, and that's a critical error. Also, we mentioned him, walking behind her. I know he just got kind of picked in a way by these people, but look how far behind her he is, right? It really, really does look and feel like he's chasing, right? So what's going on in this interaction? Tons of questions, tons of putting her on a pedestal, not conveying value. And what isn't going on is getting to the point, showing any premise, right? And so he's managed in a way to look needy and put her on a pedestal without showing any premise, which is the total opposite of what we want to do. What we want to do is be showing premise without putting her on a pedestal. So this is completely the opposite of what you want to be doing.
All right, I'll be honest. I just thought that you were really cute, so I wanted to come and talk to you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so finally he gets to the point. Finally he shows premise, but at this point, like it's kind of out of desperation, right? And what has she already determined about him? She's already determined, oh, needy guy, oh, following me, oh, asking a lot of questions. At this point, she's already kind of decided she doesn't want much to do with him. And so now, yes, he's showing premise, but he's showing it too little too late. Also, he's showing it in this kind of like apologetic way that's like, hey, listen, all this other stuff before was because I wasn't ballsy enough or I wasn't willing to show premise, right? And this is very common, right? This is not to like, you know, be hard on this particular guy. I see this all the time, that there's basically two modes that the students have. It's like no premise, no premise, no premise, no premise, and then desperate declaration of love. Right, and I don't know if desperate declaration of love quite fits this, but the point is he's showing a lot of premise all of a sudden once she's already kind of made the determination she wants nothing to do with it, right? He would have been much, much, much better off to just show that premise up front when she was still kind of assessing him and still kind of like giving him kind of a chance.
Compliment.
Huh?
Have a good day.
All right. Excuse me? You look really badass right now, so I have to come and talk to you.
Oh,
What's your name?
that's sweet.
Okay, so here we look a little bit better than the last set, at least in the sense that premise, in a sense, is being shown right away. Like, you look very badass. It's not necessarily a man-to-woman premise, but it is at least a premise of, I want to talk to you. I think you're cooler than the average random person on the street, right? And this is something that a lot of guys do when if they have trouble showing premise in their sets, is what they'll do is they'll show premise on the open. And I actually recommend this for beginners. I actually think that it's good in a way to open a bit direct or have some premise on your open if you're a beginner. So this sets off to a much better start than the last one, but let's see what he does with it.
I feel like you'd be really like a yoga instructor or something.
No.
You just like came from run or something?
Just living, no, I just came from therapy.
Therapy?
Yeah.
Therapy? What kind of therapy?
Okay, so he was doing well, showed some premise, and then he made a kind of an assertion about her as opposed to a question, and that was really good, right? So up to there, it was really good. But then he started in with the questions again. And now it's starting, you can already tell with like that first question, it started to go negatively. Also, I don't know if you got a little unlucky here. Like, I just came from therapy. That's a little bit like, it's a little bit of a heavy topic. It's kind of like cool that she's opening up and willing to say that to you, but it is a heavy topic. You have to be a little careful of digging too deeply into that one. So it's a bit of a landmine. But the more important thing in a general sense from a format bit is that he started with premise, and now within just a few seconds, now he's back to a very platonic conversation. And the way that it works with premise is you have to kind of get to a certain threshold before it exists, right? It's like if you make one kind of premise statement, maybe you've established it. You make two or three, you've definitely established it. And then at that point, you just need to maintain it. So then you can have a more normal conversation, but you have to just keep reminding. What he did is he did one statement of premise, which is probably not enough to fully establish the premise, and then he immediately went back to platonic. So whatever premise he's established is very, very quickly going to be diminished.
Like, you know, the kind that's for your mental health.
Like, is it some kind of a new yoga where you just yoga and do the therapy all together?
No. No yoga or therapy, but
That's it.
And look again, walking behind her, right? Not quite as bad as in the previous example, but very, very quickly, right? Walking behind. If you were to be, I don't know, about a yard further ahead of what he is, it would be massively, massively better for the vibe of the interaction.
Huh?
just talk a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Where are you going right now?
I gotta go. So we go home.
Okay. I was just walking that way, so I was just
Okay, so credit to him for persistence. Credit to him for saying, oh, I'm just walking that way and continuing, because most guys just give up in this situation. But this is going rapidly downhill. Why? Question, 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 platonic, 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 walking behind. So he's very quickly put himself right in the same situation he was in with the previous girl, which is that he's chasing, he's not conveying his personality, those kind of things. Now he started off a lot better, remember. He started off with a decent open and a decent follow-up to the open, right? So that was good, but then after that, he fell right in that same bad habit of question, question, question. So what could he be doing better? He could be making statements instead of asking questions, having opinions, teasing, any of these different kinds of things would be miles and miles better. And then, of course, again, walking beside or in front of the girl rather than behind would make a massive difference as well.
Excuse me. I just had to say, like, I love the whole, like, New York look. It's very impressive.
Thanks so much.
What brings you here? Are you a resident or?
Yes.
Wow, student.
Okay, so again, he starts off conveying premise on the open, which is at a beginner intermediate level, totally fine, totally good, right? But then what does he do from there? Question, question, question. At least he's like, he made an assertion, like kind of a guess one time, but it's essentially question, question, question. Also, his tonality really is that trying for rapport. Everything out of his mouth kind of sounds like a question, or sounds like it's like, so are you this? Are you this? Are you this? Right? It really is not helping him. It's not definite and assertive, right? So he really should work on his tonality. He also really needs to work on continuing the questions, and especially in the case of this guy and in student number one's case as well, if you are going to start off showing premise on the open, you're going to start off being direct. The whole point of being direct is to establish the theme in the interaction that it is direct. This is about you and her liking each other. So starting direct and then going backwards really makes no sense, right? Because starting direct is higher risk than starting indirect. However, it can actually take you somewhere, right? But if you take that same risk that rejection, and then you undo the work you've done by being platonic afterwards, you may as well have just been platonic in the first place. You'd actually be better off.
No.
Student, no.
No.
All right, riddle me this. Executive.
What?
Executive, worker, what are you?
No, I work in PR.
In PR?
Yeah.
That's what I went to school for.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we would like totally just butt heads on it, I'm sure.
No, totally.
Okay, so he's trying, right? He tried to break rapport there, which I appreciate. I know we'd totally butt heads. That's actually good. It's good that he's trying that. But let's look at everything else he's doing, right? It's question, question, question. It is trying for rapport. So he's definitely conveying himself in a very kind of a low value way, kind of conveying, a lot that what she's saying is important and what he's saying and doing isn't as important, not conveying personality. That part about we'd butt heads, I do like it. I do like it. That said, it almost like felt as though he didn't really mean it. It was like he was going through the motions on it, so it wasn't delivered the best. But I do like that element. I think that's one element that is helpful to him in this interaction. It is continuing to show some level of premise. So that's very positive. But he's already gotten very deep into the question thing.
So you go out? Oh, I see.
Okay, how can I help you? What does that mean? That means get to the point. Get to the point, right? Because what has he done? He showed premise on the start, right? And so it was clear kind of what he was there for, but then question all over the place, whatever. Didn't really go anywhere. He showed a little premise, right? Oh, we'd butt heads, right? But it wasn't a strong amount. And so she's like, look, what's the deal here? Are you hitting on me or you're not hitting on me? Do you want something from me? Get to the point. What is going on here, right? And reason being that maybe she's assessing him in a certain way. Maybe she's like kind of, because he's done these low value behaviors, she's kind of like become a little annoyed by it. Who knows? But if a girl's saying, what's the point? What's the purpose? What are you here for? That kind of stuff. That means that you made a premise mistake at some point. That means that you somehow didn't convey your intentions in quite the right way.
Good girl, and I gotta introduce myself. That's usually how it goes.
You're sweet. I have a boyfriend now.
No, it's fine. He doesn't have to know.
Okay, and here, this is just extremely playerish. So I'll give him credit, like he gets called out, and at least he like owns it. He's like, hey, listen, I like you, etc. But again, it's very, for that phrase, that's usually how it goes, just makes it seem like the most non-special, like I do this all the time, most playerish thing ever, right? And then so I have a boyfriend, so okay, he doesn't have to know, which is extremely playerish as well. Now, there's a decent chance this girl actually maybe does have a boyfriend, and so maybe this was never going to go anywhere for him, even if he had much better game. But he's definitely been pretty blatant about things like that, right? And so contrasting him to student number one, he's giving himself a much better chance of success by the fact that he is actually showing a bit more premise. However, he still has a lot of the same problems in terms of his tonality, in terms of asking too many questions, and when he does show premise, it is really obvious. Like, it's really obvious, and actually, to be fair, it's a little playerish, right? He has this sort of like tone of voice and this sort of like, you can almost imagine him like looking at the girl for a reaction after he says certain lines that just says like, I am a player or I'm trying to be a player. And again, at an intermediate kind of level, beginner intermediate level, it's not the worst thing in the world to be a bit obvious, right? And so I actually don't fault him for it. But if he wants to get to a more advanced level, he needs to definitely work on that question thing, work on his tonality, and then also he needs to make those premise statements that he's making He needs to get them more subtle and probably more frequent as well, but definitely more subtle. So those are some really excellent examples of some of the most common sticking points I see over and over and over again from students. Chances are you're making some of these same mistakes yourself. And I want to say a special thank you actually to those two guys for coming forward, putting their footage out there. Kind of a brave thing. Hopefully they learn a lot from the breakdown, and hopefully you do as well. And this is just a sampling of the student infield that's inside the system program. And just a tiny, tiny tip of the iceberg of what is inside the system in total. And that is coming out within the next few weeks. So you want to stay tuned, you want to subscribe, hit that notify button, because you are not going to want to miss any of the content between now and then. It's going to be pretty damn epic, pretty damn revolutionary. And it's at systembytodd.com, so check it out there. All right, that said, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you on the next video.